Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Advantage. We're bringing you the latest trends, tools, and tactics to help you grow your business. My name is Anne, and joining me as always is my co-host, Mr. Jim Moore.
Mr. today, huh? Whoa, that's formal.
Very distinguished. Today, we're tackling a topic that's changing the way we all find and deliver information online, the future of search. You may have noticed recently that when you search on Google these days, things are looking a little bit different. But we want to start with a little history lesson to better understand how we got to where we are today. And I definitely did some research because there was a lot to learn, and I'm hoping that Jim can help me with some of the things that I don't have firsthand knowledge with.
I think Miss Ann, that's a backhanded way of saying I wasn't alive when search started, but Jim is an old man and was.
When I was researching some of the dates, I was quite surprised at because I think growing up, it's just always been a part of my life. So it was very interesting to find out some of the starting points. But pre-internet, I believe people relied on manual directories. The one that I saw was called Yahoo Directory, which is basically just, I think a person, a human went in and created lists of websites that were available. And I think that was what people call the starting points of the internet.
Yep, that's exactly the case. The first searchable content was sometime around 1993, and the internet only became publicly available in the 1989 to 1991 period. But those early indexes were just a conglomeration of links to potential pages, potential websites. There was no context search of any kind. Just if it matched what you thought was your interest, you could click and go search it yourself.
Oh my gosh. And then from my research again, I saw that the first search engine was called Archie, which I believe came out in 1990. And again, considered the first search engine. I did note that this was before I was born, so very cool to know.
If I remember Archie correctly, it was different than current search in that it searched FTP servers for files rather than actually looking at web pages. It was considered a search engine, but it wasn't content based like search was until our discussion today about AI. It was a little different approach to search, but it was the case that was an early model. I had to do some research too because I'm old. I lived through this, but I can't remember a lot of it.
Well, it evolved so quickly.
Yes, no doubt about it. But I think that the first usable search engine that I came across was called the W3 Catalog, and that was in 1993, and that was probably the genesis of what we would consider search engine today.
Okay.
And then Google, I think, originated and made public its first search in 1995.
Yes, yeah. The other ones that I saw were Lycus. I hope I'm saying all of this correctly.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Alta Vista.
Yeah.
That name actually was kind of familiar.
Yeah, you're taking me back now. I can remember those back in the day.
Yeah, it said the research said that Lycos, Alta Vista, and Excite kind of introduced the automated web crawling algorithm, I would say, and kind of introduced keyword frequency and maybe metadata, maybe at the start there. But yes, then we have our big behemoth of Google, which came, I think, developed by Larry Page and Sergey Brin at Stanford. Hopefully I'm saying everyone's name correctly. They introduced the page ranking which was an algorithm that measured the quality and authority of a web page based on the number and the quality of links that are pointing to it. So definitely a very familiar theme there. And it's clear to see how Google has changed drastically from its starting point, but it's cool to see where it started from and what it originated from.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Miss Ann. Yeah, and if you're not pronouncing Google Search's founders' names correctly, let's hope they call us out, huh?
Yeah, please tweet at us, comment
Yes.
at us.
You want to be a guest on our podcast? That would be
Absolutely.
the point I was going to make related to what you shared is that you mentioned that the technology associated with how Google operates has certainly changed, but their mission hasn't changed over the years, which is very interesting. Their aim was always to deliver the best information based on searchers' intent, and they've become ups and downs throughout the years, but increasingly better at that as time has gone on.
Yes, definitely would agree. And then following our little time warp through the 2000s, we had more complex ranking factors that were introduced, and a variety of search engines, even though Google still remains kind of the big dog there. Of note, I wanted to mention in 2007 we had universal search introduced, and then in the late 2000s, I think probably within 2008 and 2010, Google kind of introduced the predictive search, which was definitely a game changer, I would say, and instant results, which has definitely shaped user behavior, I think, in the last 2 decades, and our expectations for what happens when we search or when we use search engines. And I think the last major revolution in terms of search engines was definitely the mobile revolution of the 2010s, where these were less research. This is more lived experience for me. But due to the rapid adoption of smartphones, Google introduced the mobile first indexing, I believe in 2018, which makes mobile usability a ranking factor, or which I guess made or makes mobile usability a ranking factor when they're determining where your website potentially ranks in search results.
Yep, excellent points to be made. And the question of how strong a signal mobile ready is now is questionable. Certainly plays into the overall quality ranking of a website, but there was a period of time that I think you identified where Google relied on that particular signal. I can't say exclusively, but to such a degree that if you were not playing along and doing what they required of you to be ranked well on mobile, you just weren't going to be ranked.
Yeah. Which then leads us to our topic of choice today, the latest revolution in search, AI overviews. I think I'm trying to recall the first time I saw an AI overview when I searched for something, and I really can't recall a date, but it's recently in the last couple months here. Do you recall a date?
I do. I don't recall the first time I saw it. The first time I read about it was in 2024.
Oh, and,
okay. Google first released it as an experiment, but it's interesting. I read an article earlier that said that AI overview is now at the point of 50% of it shows in 50% of all searches, and they consider that kind of the tipping point. The original forecast was that by 2027 it would be the dominant form of search results, but they've moved that timeline back and considered the 50% mark as the tipping point, and there's no going back from here. I think there'll be a rapid acceleration of how much AI overview you see.
Yeah. And to define so everyone's aware, AI overviews, Google has now integrated AI into the search experience, which gives you like a quick synthesized answer, pulling from multiple different website sources, and it appears right above where you typically would see links to websites. So it's very handy for the user, which again, as we've mentioned in multiple episodes, that the experience for the user is Google's most important achievement, and it's clear with this new revolution in how we're seeing people search. It gives you the answer to what you need really quickly without having to potentially click on a link, read a full article. It's the answer is right there. And it has a lot of connotations for people, especially for people in marketing, for people who are writing content for websites, for people who are writing blogs and articles and such. But it definitely, you can see that the user experience is the most important thing here. And I mean, I think I've definitely used it in my everyday life now. At first, I found it very distracting because I wasn't expecting it, but I've quickly adopted as I think I generally tend to early adopt when it comes to technology. How are you finding the user experience for AI overviews?
I agree with what you said. I too was at first put off by it, not understanding exactly what was going on there. But I do use it on a daily basis now. I think it's a good point or a good time to make the point that we've talked in this discussion so far today about the driving factor behind Google's search products is delivering the best information. In other words, they adapted or adopted, I should say, ways of making their search results more pertinent based on what users' intent was. I think this AI overview represents a shift in that, and rather than basing their output on user intent, they're in the business now of trying to formulate or trying to form user behavior. Rather than making sure we're providing the best answer, we're going to start to shape, this is Google speaking, we're going to start to shape how you use that content. And I think that's quite a shift in mission for Google. Doesn't obliterate the original intent, but it's definitely a different approach.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just to bring us back to search in general, I know we've obviously mentioned, and we all know Google's a big player in this field, but I did also briefly want to mention some of the other search engines, because I read that Bing Chat also has a similar partnership with OpenAI. I'm not sure what the other search engines are doing in response to this move, but I think it's fair to assume that they're also adopting AI in various ways. But OpenAI, by the way, for everyone who doesn't know, owns the ChatGPT platform, which is another big player in the AI field. So that is Bing's response to the AI revolution. And I wasn't able to find, I don't know if you have any information on what some of the other search engine players, I'm not sure what Safari is doing in the Apple world, but I think they have a similar partnership with OpenAI as well.
Interesting. I don't have any information on other search platforms related to AI. I think that it would be surprising to me if the big players were not working on something to rival Google's approach. I'm interested because I'm not an Apple user or a Mac user. So you're suggesting that Safari is currently offering an AI overview similar kind of product, or is it something you think they're planning?
I think it's something that is probably coming soon. I do know that Apple has partnered with ChatGPT because Apple, in some of their other applications, has AI usages. For example, in Notes, it can help you like craft messages. It can help you craft responses in your email application. So I think it's coming, but I haven't personally seen in the Safari search results, because usually even in Safari, I still am on Google. So I haven't seen if Safari has something that's competing with AI overview yet, but I definitely would see that coming soon.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. I probably should spend more time learning those things. But as you likely know, for our clients, Google is 90 to 96% of the search-driven traffic. So
absolutely,
it's kind of if you apply the 80-20 rule to what you're going to learn about, it's a very small percent. You gain a very small percentage of value
Yeah.
by spending time learning about the others.
Let's dive into some of the implications of Google's AI overviews for businesses, for content creators. I'm not sure. Those are the two big audiences that I think would be impacted greatly. But I'm sure it impacts a whole host of other people in a lot of different ways. But the biggest thing that I noted in my use of Google's AI overviews was there's less emphasis on traditional ranking and CTRs, and potentially less people going onto your site, so less traffic for your site, and which is, as everyone knows, a really big metric for content creators, for people in website development. You're trying to get more people to your site, and with this new way of search, it's less likely that people will be clicking into your site. Not saying it's impossible. There's definitely ways of people still obviously transitioning from search results to your site, but it's just becoming less likely, which I think is a major change for a lot of people. Basically, if people's answers or people's questions are answered in the search results page, they are less likely to want to visit your site or to click a link to your site. So I think the opportunity here is within Google's AI overview snippet, they have sources cited, which I think definitely boosts credibility and maybe drives targeted traffic to your site. That's a potential. I don't know if there's any data on if that's true or not, but I could see that being a potential win if you are able to get into the AI overview. Any other opportunities or implications that you've seen from Google's AI overview?
I think what you've identified is important, and a couple of observations I'll make. One of them is an anecdote, but one of the first things that'll stand out to anyone who's interested in driving traffic via Google's AI overview is that it takes to get to your website an extra click that wasn't required when in traditional search rankings. In other words, if you look at the AI overview, there'll be the little link chain there, and you click that, and then it will show you the source, and then you can go to the source on the right of that and click and go on through to the website. So it does require an extra step. I think your point about targeted, I think targeted was the terminology that you used.
Yes.
I'm going to go back to searcher intent. I think that it's a good filter for searcher intent. And what that could mean for folks who are trying to get traffic to their website is that the searchers who end up on your website are likely better qualified and more likely to stick around your website. They're really interested in what you have to say. Google's kind of provided them an idea of what you're going to talk about, and then you've already filtered them through 2 steps to get them to your website. So the likelihood of them sticking around to consume your content is probably greater. I don't have statistics, a wide array of statistics to support that, Ms. Ann, but I'll share with you that for our clients that we've provided what I'm going to start using the term GEO or generative optimization. We did see an increase in traffic to the pages that were optimized and being used in Google's AI overview. And we did see in these small sample of clients longer time on page. Now, that would be compared to normal or traditionally ranking pages. They were traditionally ranking pages. They also happen to be picked up by AI overview, and we saw, as I think I've mentioned before, on average about 115% increase in traffic to those particular pages. So that's a small sample for us, so I can't say what that means universally. There is some grit on the gears in terms of having to have more clicks to get them through, but I think that the likelihood of them going to your page, not finding what they want, going back, clicking the next link is reduced in those those instances of being able to rank well in AI overview. I also, if I may, want to introduce a third constituency for potential impact from AI overview, and that's folks who advertise, who pay to advertise on Google. Google is experimenting with paid links or paid advertising in their AI overview at the present time. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out in the end.
Absolutely.
Of course, it dilutes the AI overview if they do it, but as AI overview pushes ads down, that works against their revenue model. So it's going to be an interesting outcome to see how Google compensates for the potential loss of revenue for their paid campaigns.
Absolutely. I attended the Google marketing event. I think they have it yearly, but it was this month in June sometime. And they definitely focused, they understood that, again, Google's a business. They understood that a lot of their paid advertising clients had a lot of hesitations with the AI overviews, basically pushing down their ad and getting less eyes on their ad. And they definitely have a lot of plans around how they're going to work around that and how to incorporate ads into the AI overviews, and how the AI overviews can even help your ad strategy. A lot of it was coming soon and to be determined. But yes, I definitely think that's going to be a very interesting evolution as well, as how AI and this new strategy will change how people advertise on Google as well.
Yeah, I don't want to dilute the conversation too far, but it's interesting to me to kind of go backwards and put some building blocks together and recognize Google's push towards their Performance Max campaigns rather than their regular search campaigns over the months previous to the release of Google AI Overview. And just, again, not to dilute it too far, but Performance Max kind of provides you an alternative to plain search marketing or advertising, in that you can be featured in a lot of different places that aren't as impacted by the Google AI. Our general experience with the Performance Max is that's not a good substitute for a good
search campaign,
traditional search campaign, but it was kind of interesting to see them do that. Google has a history, though, of trying things out and maybe putting their foot in it for a while until they get it figured out, and then finding their way back. So there is some disruption involved right now in the negative sense, but it'll be interesting to see how that comes together.
Yeah, agreed. Just bringing us back, I did want to discuss how credibility, conversational content, structured data, expertise, how those themes can help people rank or show up in Google's AI overview. Basically, how to make your content more valued by Google and eventually showing up in their AI overviews. So as we've discussed in a previous episode, we went in depth about the EEAT method. And I think what stood out to me with Google AI overviews is authority and credibility. I don't know if there's any other themes that you think, or strategies that you think would help content writers get their content into Google's AI overview. But I definitely feel like credibility and conversational content, basically content that answers a question that people are likely to be searching. I think those are the keys for me when it comes to creating content for Google AI.
I agree with what you just said, Ms. Ann, and actually I've noticed that in the content that you've been producing most recently, that it includes a lot of questions and answers. And I think the item that I might add to that is that for content creators, flexibility becomes important. And when I say flexibility, I mean being able to adjust your content based on searcher intent, determining what searcher intent is around keywords, what some long tail keywords may be the difference between informational and promotional content. I think that it takes a little bit of more study around learning about searcher intent before writing content to optimize your writing for potential use in the AI overview. And I know as a content creator, you probably do some search intent research before doing an article. As a novice at it, that didn't always enter my sphere of putting content together, but it's definitely something that you have to think about now. You have to think at a deeper level about your content and why people would be searching for it. And if you can capture that, then the likelihood of being utilized by Google AI overview is probably higher.
Yeah, I agree. I think even for me, the part of the writing where we do like keyword research and try to categorize our content based on that, I think that's the part that's evolved really quickly, because previously we were really focused on what keywords or key phrases, which I think has now changed into more of a focus and a higher degree of focus on the intent behind the searches that people are making. And also, I think it's expanded from keywords to key phrases and key sentences almost, because the words are, they're still important. The keywords are still important, but I think having an idea of the questions that are really attached to this word gives you a better way to kind of frame your content to answer the actual full search. So I think that's evolved really quickly, and I think I'm still getting used to that process when it comes to writing content and planning content, but it's definitely been a work in progress.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful to hear. And I think a simple example might be helpful. If you think about the search term, let's just say furniture repair. There may have been a time where focusing on furniture repair, that set of words would be the direction you'd go. And I don't mean you, I mean in general, that you may go in terms of your content. But when you think about the potential intention of the searcher in those instances, it opens up your eyes to what the possibilities are. Someone may be searching for furniture repair near them. They may be looking for a retail solution for their problem. Other people may be looking for information about how to do their own furniture repair.
Yeah,
and learning that and trying to determine that what's most likely to be the case for searchers, and balancing that with the value you're trying to provide to the client for whom you're writing the information is the balance. Someone who sells furniture repair or provides the service of furniture repair may not necessarily want to visit the visitor who's looking for do-it-yourself information about furniture repair. And then on the other hand, and I know I've bumped into this in my own content creation, maybe you do. Maybe your content is to convince them that doing it themselves is not the way to go, and they could come see your store. But that's an easy example of what intent means behind a search.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good example. I think for me, the key which isn't new, but is always good to keep in mind, is just to think like a human and not a machine, and answer questions in a natural voice. I think that is, to me, the key to getting into Google's AI snippets. So definitely something to keep in mind, kind of a North Star, if you will. The other things, like you already mentioned, I've definitely taken this into account in my writing in answering questions, but I think FAQs, as we've discussed previously as well, bullet points, numbered lists, I think those are well known to be easy ways to get Google's attention on your content and to hopefully get into their AI overview. Are there any other like functional strategies that you can think of for how to format your content?
Functionally, and I'll take that to mean technical, I don't identify anything different except for what may come from, and I'm not sure I'd qualify this as a technical aspect of your writing, but back to that intentionality, that's an important piece. And that's technical in the sense that you want to use a voice that answers that intention. But
Mhm.
this, if there's a specific technique for that, I'm not able to identify it. Something you said earlier, which is very important, we're finding important in optimizing our clients' content for AI overview, is credibility. And anything that you can add, you've mentioned authors' bios in the past, but anything you can do to establish your expertise in your writing is important. And you can imagine why, if you think about Google essentially taking responsibility for your choices in this instance. Now, if we take Google in its traditional model of a SERP page, you put in keywords, it says, here's the best information for you. You make a choice about it.
That's
You
true.
decide which of this is the best information. And we'll make this ridiculous and say, let's say it's a medical question.
Mhm.
Here's a list of people that may have the answer for you, was the traditional approach. Now, if it delivers specific advice, Google wants to be sure it's using credible, authoritative information. It doesn't want to deliver snake oil answers and potentially take responsibility for the outcome. I mean, Google's moving into a space where, and as we talk about the future of AI overview, and Google, this will become even more true. They're essentially taking responsibility for the content that's being delivered. They're linking, of course, but they're saying right in your face. They're not saying, here's your choices. They're saying, here's the answer.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction. And I hadn't thought about, obviously, I'm sure we've all signed away our lives and we can't sue them if, something horrible happens. Uh, but that's a really good point of Google basically prescribing the answer and kind of removing the choice from it, and it being more of a responsibility for them.
Yes, it's definitely the case. And anything you can do to help them mitigate that potential risk by assuring them that the answers that they're providing are the correct answers or the best answers is in your favor in those instances. Just as an example, anecdotal example, one of our clients for whom we're finding great success in ranking with Google AI, we went through his entire blog, which I think turned out to be 137 articles. And we wrote this he had a lot of credentials that just weren't being communicated on his blog articles. We went through and wrote this really fancy biography for him that included all his credentials and added it on, and it seems to have helped. I think that kind of communicating your authority and why Google should consider those authoritative answers is important.
Yeah, definitely agree. And speaking of the future of AI, we definitely have a few things we want to talk about or a few directions that we think Google and search in general could be approaching. One was predictive and personalized results. I've definitely seen some articles that kind of discuss how this could work in terms of search. And I think the general consensus is that Google and other search engines could start to understand the context of queries, which we've definitely seen the beginnings of, but I think it could get a lot more personal. Again, as we've already mentioned, Google knows everything about us. And I think they start to use that information to kind of personalize the answers that we're getting, which I think could have interesting results when it comes to advertising, for example. I think the whole point of I hope the whole point of a lot of their strategies is to get to the point where when you search for something, you get exactly what you need right away, and you don't have to do any deep diving or doing any guess and check. So I think using the background information that they might have on the persons who's searching and giving them the answers that are personalized to them as a person, not just to them as, a general searcher. I think that could get even more in depth and more personal in the future.
Agreed. That is definitely a direction that they're moving. And related to that, and probably even more related to our earlier conversation about the positives and negatives for the constituencies for the use of Google AI. One of the directions that Google seems to be moving is that they're going to make their AI overview even more functional. Aside from personalization, they're going to give you tools in that AI that let you refine it, simplify it, look for additional information within the AI, which is going to detract, again, as another step removed from having to go visit the websites that you previously may have visited for the information. But it's going to become a much more interactive experience than it currently is. And part of that process, part of the reason they do that, in addition to wanting to keep people on the page, on the SERP page, is that it helps them build a profile for what your search activities are. This is what I wanted to know, this is what I wanted to know more about when I was doing these things. Here's the kind of answers I like. As I ask Google AI to simplify their answers for me, or to break it down, or put it in steps, it begins to learn my behavior and can deliver that kind of content without those additional steps. So like we talked about before with Google Assistant being valuable for its users, it's another case where it's valuable to Google because it learns about us and it trains us.
Absolutely.
It begins to train us on how to interact with AI in general and Google tools specifically. So it's going to build tools that make it more valuable, more interactive, more personal. At the same time, it's going to train us to make it to adjust to the limitations that the AI has.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is also another divergent, but in the Google marketing event, again, they also showed how the future of shopping through Google, where they're trying to go. And again, this goes back to the lack of you going onto a site. So using the example of shopping for a sweater, Google's AI would then, based on what it thinks you like in fashion, for example, would show you options of sweaters, and you would pick an option. All of this is in the kind of overview window, and purchase it from that window, all without actually visiting that company's site. So I thought that was very interesting. And they even had some ideas about how, I don't know how they're getting this information, but you would also be able to see the sweater on you, like not a hologram, but an image of you.
Yeah. Kind of like the Zenni glasses, right? Where you can see the glasses. Yeah.
Oh, definitely personalized in that way, but all fascinating to see where this all goes.
Yeah. put in your body statistics, will build you
exactly.
That's probably the next step, right?
I think it might be.
You know what's interesting to me, Miss Ann, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but when you think about Google Shopping now, the Google Shopping application, which it doesn't quite go to that extent, but could certainly be adapted to do that. And we talked about Google sometimes putting your foot in things for a while and making things seem like it's not going to work. And then all of a sudden they've got this grand tool that they make available. It's interesting to see these building blocks come together, right? They build these non-integrated applications with a grand scheme in mind, and you don't recognize it at the time, but eventually something comes out of it where everything comes together and it works so smoothly. And I know from the backside of Google Shopping, from trying to set up Google Shopping for clients, it's a bear. It's terrible to use. And it was one of those cases where it made me say, this can't be the end product for them. This is ridiculous. I mean, this is like the Flintstone mobile. It's terrible. It's a terrible experience. But I think it was a case where they were trying to get a building block in place. They had a grand vision, and you just described what the outcome may be in those instances.
Possibly. I mean, we'll look forward to seeing where that goes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Any other futuristic outlooks that you want to share about where we think search is going?
The one point I wanted to make that we didn't touch on was AI vis-a-vis traditional search results in terms of traditional ranking. And there's some indication in our experience with the sites that or pages that we've had ranked well, I said that backwards, with the pages that we've had picked up by Google AI, they tend to rank better in the traditional or organic rankings. Also, their rankings move up when Google uses their material
Right.
in Google AI.
Yeah.
I've seen that identified as a ranking signal. It would make sense that it is. If Google's saying this is good content, it makes sense for that to move up. But that's another artifact of our own experience that is very interesting. So for the old timers who are still trying to rank well in the traditional sense, in using traditional SEO and not wanting to make the switch for fear of losing ranking because now they're trying to optimize for a different result, that being AI rather than traditional search, I don't think that's going to turn out to be the case. I think the likelihood is, based on our experience and rational thinking, if you can optimize and conquer Google AI, I think it's going to help your pages in the traditional sense also.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's definitely something that we've learned with firsthand experience, which does bring me to our key takeaways and the most important things that business owners should take away from this conversation, which is, AI and AI overviews are looking like they're here to stay. I know it started out as an experiment, but I think we're past the experimental stage now. So it's really important that we adapt or risk losing visibility on Google as a whole. And I think, as we've mentioned a few times now, it's important to prioritize EEAT. If you need more information on that, we do have an episode available where you can dive into that. But I think reviewing your existing content to align to those principles would be key. Would be a key tactic to help you adapt, and just as we've already mentioned, focusing on how you can show your credibility to Google.
Right, and I'd add to your summation, which was excellent, some other of the pertinent points. You mentioned establish your expertise, use facts, base your content. Make sure that an emphasis of your content is questions and answers.
Absolutely.
And I would suggest spending more time than you're probably used to doing on searcher intent. Learn from Google search pages, put your keywords in and look at what the Google also searched section is, and it will identify for you what searcher intent is around those keywords that you're using, and try to build a balance between what searchers are looking for and what you're trying to sell at the same time, and make some and put yourself in a position to make some decisions about whether you want to attract those particular searchers or not. So I just fill out what you said a little bit with those points.
Thank you very much. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We've uncovered what Google's AI overview is, how it's transforming search, and most importantly, what you can do to stay visible in this new era of AI-powered search. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share with anyone that you think could benefit from this conversation. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, Miss Ann.